Today, we're going to be looking at 10 Pokemon I think are currently being overlooked in Regulation D, but I expect them to have good results at the Pokemon World Championships. So, the first Pokemon we're going to take a look at here is Chiu. Now, I know what most of you are thinking. Scott, Chiu is a good Pokemon. It's been a good Pokemon ever since it was introduced. Yes, I know. But Chiu has kind of dropped off quite a bit in Regulation D, mainly because the meta so far has just been incredibly hyper offensive. And while it, obviously pairs incredibly well with things like, Flutter Mane and Iron Bundle, it is one that just kind of, it wasn't really quick enough. It didn't put out just enough damage. It didn't really eat, hits from like for example, Power Knight. I think Power Knight was a big reason why this mon kind of wasn't that great. Also, with the Urshis running around, if you Terra out of, say like the Dark type, then the Wicked Blows, the Sucker Punches can really match you up. Obviously, if you're not Terra, Water, or Grass, you're going to get messed up by, potential Choice Scarf, Surging Strike. So there's a lot of things Chiu was kind of struggling with, but as the meta is slowly dying down and, Tornadus is kind of dropping off, I do think Chiu does have a really interesting place in the meta. Now, there are a couple sets that I think are going to be pretty good. Obviously, you've got the standard ones that everyone's been running for quite a while, which, you've got like the Heat Wave and Dark Pulse. You pair that up with, say, Protect and Nasty Plot. Now, that is the pretty common set a lot of people run, especially, especially in Regulation C. This was kind of like the new balance meta. You run something like Leftovers on this. Citrus Berry is also good. There's also the option as well of safety goggles, right? It just depends how you do it. And more commonly than not, you're going for something, say, like Terra Water, or even potentially Terra Grass. It really depends on, what your matchup is. And yeah, this is pretty stock standard. People would run to, say, something like one of these two bumps here. You put as much speed as you want on it. I think, if you're running like a semi-quick team, something like that's probably fine. You just dump the rest in HP. And, you can just go modest at that point, right? Again, there's a few different things, though. You can drop that down to the previous bump, which I think is, yeah, that one there, 36. You could maybe go like max speed. It's entirely up to you how you want to run something like this. I do think that the bulky Chiu is definitely good, especially, with something like screen support, maybe like Intimidate plus a Moongus. Like, I think Lando plus a Moongus is a fantastic core. And yeah, I do think Chiu is just one of those mons that it's being a little underlooked just because Heatran is probably the best Dark type at the minute. Oh, sorry, not best Dark type, sorry, best Fire type. But I think the set that is kind of picking up, and we did see it over the weekend as well, is actually the choice sets. Now, a really cool thing with Chiu is, being that it is a base 100 mon, if you go Timid Max Speed, you do outspeed things like Urshifu, which I think is really important because Urshifus right now are tending to run a lot of choice scarves. Basically, a lot of people are running it as that option to either, in the Tailwind mirrors, you make sure you're faster than things like Flutter Mane, or, if your team is like more like, say, bulky offense, you want that kind of speedy option where, if your opponent's not running Tailwind, you still have the option to be the fastest thing on the board. So you either go that or Specs. I think Specs in Sun with Torn is kind of insane. Because like a lot of people when they run Specs are going like Terra Fire, and you're just firing off like insane heat waves, right? Like if you're up against like a team that is more balanced and like, hey, they just straight up kind of outspeed you on turn one. You just pair this with Tornadus, you set up the Sun, you fire off like a Specs Terra Fire heat wave. It's absolutely insane. This mon also gives you things like Flamethrower as well, which can be kind of cool. Overheat's another really good option, if you feel like you need to pick certain things up. Obviously, Dark Pulse is like always fantastic on this mon. But to round it out, there's two other moves that I think are like also pretty decent. One of which is Snarl. Now, I really like Snarl on both the Scarf and the Spec set because I do think Psy Spam is a mode that is like, it's still a little underrated, but it's definitely going to be on the rise again. And I do think it's going to be really, really good. So I think having that option to just like make sure like you don't lose to Psy Spam is really, really nice. But the other one here is Terra Blast. And now there's a couple reasons for that, right? So I think Terra Blast, especially if you're probably a Scarf set, is probably a little better. But Terra Water, Terra Blast is like really, really good. Terra Grass as well does give you options to like pick up the Urshis in one shot, which is also really nice. But a set I think is like potentially like a sleeper is actually Terra Fairy, because basically a lot of Urshis, right? If you see the Chiu, you're probably just going to click CC because they're tearing into like grass or water, right? So like there's no point in Surging Striking. And if you're playing, the normal Urshi, sorry, not normal Urshi, Dark Urshi, then it's like, oh, well, if they keep their Dark type being like they resist it, but like just go for the CC, right? It's either super effective. Yeah, it's either super effective or it's neutral. It's just better, right? So I think something like Terra Fairy to eat those fighting moves, especially as well with things like Iron Hands as well, I think that are really good right now. And then just giving you like just a really strong Terra Blast, I do think it is really, really sick. In terms of spreads on this, honestly, it really comes down to you. I think, either Timid Max or like just like Modest at like 143. You could even like run max speed to get it. It's entirely up to you. This is a set I definitely want to play around with a bit more, but I do think Chiu is a mon that is definitely going to be performing a lot better, I think, at Worlds than it has in, some of the more recent events. Now, continuing on from our hyper offensive friend there, I have another one that I think is criminally underused right now, and that is Iron Bundle. Now, everyone knows what Iron Bundle does, right? This thing, it likes to run Boost Energy or Focus Sash. It likes to be really damn quick, and it likes to click Icy Wind, and it likes to click Freeze Dry. Now, the reason why I think this mon is kind of slept on right now is, you know, it's kind of two reasons, right? So, one, if your opponent goes for, say, like a Tailwind team, having, you know, that fast Icy Wind is like really, really good into, you know, potentially slowing down the Tauns. Because I believe a Taunt at -1 in Tailwind is always slower than you. And it's also really good into things like Urshifu, because if you know for a fact that your opponent is, say, running like an Adamant Urshifu, you still outspeed it even if they get Tailwind up, right? So something like a Freeze Dry can just come out and just like, you know, remove an Urshi, I think is really, really good. This one also gets like obviously Hydro Pump, like, which is like pretty good, especially because I do think Rain is going to be like kind of decent. But a really cool tech as well this one gets is Encore. So I don't necessarily think you need Hydro Pump on this team unless like you really, really want the water move. I do think something like this is really good. And the reason for Encore, like as I said, right, under Tailwind, you still outspeed a lot of mons, right? Like, you know, because I think you hit 309, which means they need to go to 155, which most Urshis don't want to do. And a lot of like the other, like, you know, mons, like, you know, for example, we're just talking about Chiu, right? Not every Chiu wants to go max speed. And if they don't go max speed, you're going to outspeed them in Tailwind, right? So I do think this is one of those mon that is really, really slept on just for the fact that it does just outspeed things in Tailwind. But on top of that as well, I do think in a really, really hyper offensive meta, you know, if you're trading Tailwinds, having that secondary speed control option in Icy Wind, I think is super, super clutch. Like, I think Iron Bundle is like so criminally underrated for that. Like, obviously coming into this season, you know, a lot of people said, you know, Aleki was just going to be better. Obviously it naturally outspeeds it, and it Scarf sets faster than the booster set. But yeah, I think the second form of speed control is absolutely insane. And as much as Taunt has kind of dropped off in tournament play, I do think Taunt will definitely be one of the, you know, one of the best mons at Worlds, right? Because I still think Tornadus is the best Tailwind setter in the game. I think we all know that. And I think having something like Iron Bundle on Taunt teams is going to be incredibly important to winning those mirrors. Now, speaking of winning those mirrors, the other mon that basically does a very similar thing here is Aleki. Now, Aleki coming into the format, everyone was saying this is going to be the best Pokemon in the format, blah, blah, blah. Turns out it's not. Aleki has been kind of underwhelming for the most part, but I do think Aleki is pretty slept on at the minute, and a big reason for it is similar to what I just said with Iron Bundle. I think having a second form of speed control on Tailwind teams is incredibly important. Not to mention this mon has the ability to threaten one-shots onto, you know, opposing Tornaduses, which I think is one of the best ways to deal with Tornadus, right? Like, if you can just straight up outspeed, you know, so like its ally, like say it sets up Tailwind, you KO the Taunt, your ally KOs, you know, the Taunt's ally, put you in a really, really good position. And this mod with Transistor and, you know, access to things like Thunderbolt can absolutely just pump out damage, right? And again, you know, we talked about it before, secondary speed control is insane. Like, Electro Web is like super, super good. It also has pivot potential with Volt Switch, which I do think is really, really slept on. And then your last move comes down to, I guess, what you want to do here, right? So, Focus Sash is really good. Obviously, this mon's squishy as hell. Like, you look at these defensive stats, right? 80 HP, 50 in the defenders. You're getting one shot by a lot of things right now, right? There's not many things that you can really live. But the other option here is you don't have to live anything if you just kill them first, right? Terra Electric choice specs, I think, is incredibly good. Especially, too, if you are playing it on something like Tailwind, where, like, you're like, hey, look, I just gotta get my Tailwind, and I'm still the fastest thing in this game. Or alternatively, basically what I was saying as well with, you know, the Iron Bundle just before, you can go with Choice Scarf set. Now, Choice Scarf I do think is really, really interesting on this mon because all you really need to do on this is make sure that you outrun Iron Bundle, right? Fun fact, Iron Bundle hits a whopping, I think it is 206 speed off the top of my head. Is that right? 206 is like Timid Iron Bundle? I'm pretty sure that's it, right? Not gone crazy. Just want to double check this. Oh. What have we done here? Timid? Yeah, 206. All right, Aleki with 0 speed outspeeds that. Why is that so important? Because a Choice Scarf Aleki can literally do this. Right? You can just go like Modest and then dump it in HP and you're still the fastest thing in the game. Like, you're still outspeeding those, you know, Iron Bundles with a set like this, right? And you know, other cool things as well this mon has, obviously, it's kind of what everyone spoke about coming into the meta, right? Was you can go Terra Blast, Terra Ice. You know, I do think this is, I don't want to say it's a meme, you know, especially because Lando is on the rise and whatnot, but for the most part, I think just going like 4 electric moves, especially on a choice set, is probably like the play. Eerie Impulse is another really cool option this mon gets as well, just because like, you know, you can just like go up against the opposing Fluttermane and just like outspeed it and just neuter it, right? Because if Fluttermane gets -2, that fucking sucks, man. And like, not to mention as well, like, it's probably the only mon in the meta with Eerie Impulse that isn't Prankster. Like, obviously, you know, Fundy is running it right now, but Thundy can't use Eerie Impulse on, you know, a what's it called? I'm blanking Chiu, right? It can't use it on Chiu where this can, right? So having that option to potentially, you know, neuter something late game is really, really cool. And I do think Aleki is a mon that will definitely get some good results, because not only is this like a fantastic support, you know, with things like Electro Web, Eerie Impulse, Volt, Switch Pivoting, but this mon just pumps out damage. You know, with Terra Electric, that T-Bolt is going to pick up a lot of things where, like, you probably don't think it should, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I do think Aleki will get some play on some of those more hyper-offensive teams. Now, look, I'm not going to lie. This next mon here is a mon that I'm shocked at how little this mon's usage is. Now, that is Tingloo. Now, look, I know what a lot of people are going to say, right? Oh, Qian Power with, you know, Ice Spinner, Icicle Crash, hit you for super effective. The Urshifu's both hit you for super effective, whether that be the close combats, the Surgy Strikes, blah, blah, blah. I know, right? I get it. This mon, I think right now in this meta, this mon's a Terra Hog, right? Basically, if you're bringing this, you probably want to Terra it. But that's not always a bad thing. Like, you look at Tingloo, man, this mon is absolutely insane. Like, what I think a mon like Tingloo does better than most is, like, if you just go like Terra Water, just look at those stats, man. Like, look at this HP stat. Look at this defense stat, man. Like, you can just, like, yeah, like, sure, you have to Terra in front of, like, you know, an Urshi, but dude, you're just so bulky, man. This mon does so much, and its attack stats like pretty decent. 110 is like kind of insane. Now look, I don't think you run Fisher. Obviously, you know, Fisher's definitely a thing. Ruination's also a really cool move. I do think in like such a hyper offensive meta, Ruination maybe like isn't the best. But this one still pumps out damage, right? You have things like Stomping Tantrum, right? You have things like Throat Chop. It also has things like Heavy Slam. Like, Fluttermane is a mon right now that is kind of like running around without like a good friend, if you know what I mean. Like, in terms of like the, you know, the Chius, the Iron Bundles, like the special attackers it had last meta aren't really as like, you know, good right now, which means, you know, Tingloo kind of like, it doesn't need its ability as much, and you can kind of run it more as this like, you know, like bulky physical mon that, you know, just can like one shot of Fluttermane, which I think is really, really cool. In terms of items, obviously I think Assault Vest is always going to be really good on this thing. Its physical bulk is just so good that like making sure it's, you know, special bulk is like as good or like, you know, up there is like obviously really, really important. But there's also things like lefties. I still think like lefties on this mon's really, really good. A really cool set as well is like the weakness policy. Like, I do really like weakness policy paired up with things like Bronzong. Because, you know, if you can get this thing under Tailwind, sorry, under Trick Room, and it gets +2, you know, Earthquakes from this, man, they just start hurting, right? Like, they just start hurting. And like, another cool thing too is like Tingloo's like, yeah, like it's a pretty slow mon, but you could still pair this on like a, you know, a hyper offensive Tailwind team. And like, this could be your, you know, your defensive pivot, right? Like, you're using this like as a defensive pivot that can also like pump out damage, right? Like, if you have like AV, you know, you invest some bulk, like maybe you put some like points in attack, you know, maybe like you're crazy and you run like, I don't know, like 75 fucking speed. Let's just say that, yeah. And then, I don't know, you just go like something like this, yeah. Like, let's just say that's your spread. This mon, right? If you start clicking EQs with this, that's gonna hurt, man. Like, 176 is like pretty damn strong, man. But yeah, look, I think Tingloo is super slept on. I like, again, as I said, I think this mon's a Terra Hog. I do think like Terra Water is probably its best Terra right now. It's either that or like something like Terra Fairy, Terra Grass, right? You just want to like make sure that you can survive some of the more physical offensive mons in the meta. And this mon can just pump out damage. Like, again, it also has access to things like Rock Slide, man. Like, this mon can actually do quite a lot. I am really shocked at how little this is being played, but I definitely expect to see this get some pretty good results. Now, the next one I'll look at here is probably the most, like, forgotten Pokemon of the meta. And that's Arcanine, right? So, basically, Arcanine has been kind of overshadowed by its Hisuian variant. Obviously, everyone knows Hisuian Arcanine. It's been pretty damn good, right? I think that rock typing's been fantastic in helping it take on things like the Power Knight. I do think it was one of the mons that was incredibly good, you know, when Power Knight was kind of really on the rise. It was a mon that could like come in with Intimidate, you know, lower the attack of the Qian Power, and then fire off, you know, some pretty strong rock moves, right? And I think rock coverage is fantastic right now. Obviously, the Genies are running around, Powers running around. Like, there's a lot of mons up right now that don't want to deal with rock coverage. And, you know, having things like Rock Slide, Rock Blast, you know, is it Head Smash it gets? Oh my God, Scott. Head Smash. No, it's not. What's the rock, what's the rock move I'm thinking of? I'm going crazy. Oh, I'm not on the Arcanine, that's why. dude. Oh my God, dude. It is Head Smash. Yeah, it's Head Smash. I was going crazy then. All right, so obviously that one's really good for a lot of reasons, right? But regular Arcanine does not have the, you know, the rock weakness, right? The weakness, sorry, of the rock type. Rock typing is a pretty poor defensive typing. Obviously, gives it a 4x weakness to water and ground, which, you know, really sucks. It means it doesn't resist steel types anymore. You know, gives it a weakness to fighting types as well. Like, the rock typing, while offensively is really good, defensively is quite bad. And I think, you know, regular Arcanine does do quite a few things that, you know, the Hisuian variant doesn't. So it's not that it doesn't, they just function slightly differently because obviously the typing's a bit different and whatnot. Oh, obviously this mon is still like a really good extreme speed user. Obviously he's got flare, but it's like this mon pumps out damage, right? Like, don't get me wrong, this mon, even though it's a support, it pumps out damage. But one thing I do really like about, you know, regular Arcanine as well is it has, you know, the access to like Snarl. And then, like, obviously, again, both Arcanines have Snarl, but you can sit this like in, or like, you know, lead this into say something like a Flutter Mane, and then like, you know, you're stuck clicking Snarls. A really cool thing too is this one takes on the Heatrans a lot better than the Hisuian version does, because obviously, you know, the Hisuian version has to really just click Terra. It doesn't matter if you Snarl, you know, Snarl a Heatran, Earth Power is just gonna one tap you. Where Snarl is really good into Heatran. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, like I'm almost certain this is how it works. Even if a Heatran's behind sub, Snarl still lowers its special attack stat, which is really cool. Which is, again, a big reason why I think this mon's really cool into it. Obviously, it resists a lot of what it does. And, you know, with Snarl plus, say, like a Berry, you're able to take on Heatrans, you know, pretty damn well. And I do think also Howl support right now is really underrated. So I think getting off one Howl on this mon and then just clicking E-speeds is like incredible. But a lot of the top meta mons, they love it, right? Like, you know, you look at things like, you know, obviously Chien Power, Dragonite, these mons like getting +1. The Urshis love it. Did you get a +1 on Urshi? Man, it's going to pop off. There's, you know, a lot of other physical mons that are kind of slept on right now, but, you know, are still pretty good. You know, for example, like, say, Bascule Legion, you know, great on Rain. You know, I don't know if you want to pair this thing with Rain, but, you know, yeah, I think there's a lot of mons that benefit from Howl right now. And I think just the pure fire typing is just a fantastic typing, right? And like this mod's pretty bulky, it hits pretty hard, it's pretty fast. It's just overall Arcanine right now is like it's just a good mon, man. I'm really sad it's like kind of fallen off. Like, I get it, Lando's a better Intimidate mon and the Hisuian version's kind of better into the current meta. But yeah, man, this mod, like, it does a lot. And like, I think in terms of item, right, you're looking at Citrus, you're looking at like safety goggles. You know, they're probably really the only two. Like, maybe you go for like a Pinchberry. You know, you could go like a Figgy Berry if you wanted. In terms of Terras, though, Terra Normal's good. That's another reason, too, why I actually do like this over the Hisuian version. Because, like, if you get, like, Howls up, Terra Normal E-Speeds, like, start putting in work, where, you know, this mon doesn't, like, it's not weak to fighting moves, where Hisuian Arcanine is, so, like, Terraing into Normal kind of, it's just not good, right? Because it's like, oh, well, like, you're keeping this fighting weakness, where, at least with the, you know, the regular Arcanine, you're not already weak to it, you're not baiting in fighting moves as it is. So that's really cool. But, you know, again, if you're going to like Citrus, you probably want to go like Terra Grass. If you're going Goggles, then Terra Water is probably the play. But yeah, Arcanine right now I think is really underrated. Now, I'm sure you've all probably been waiting for this one, and that's my guy Roaring Mid, aka the GOAT Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon is a pretty interesting mon. So coming into the format, I thought, hey, Roaring Moon is probably like the second or third best Tailwind setter in the game. Turns out you just don't click Tailwind on this mon. Like, if you guys want to click Tailwind, just go Torn, go Talonflame, go Murkrow, go anything else, man. But what this does have is a really good booster energy Terra Flying set. Now, there are a couple ways to play this. I think this mon is really good with redirection. I think Indeedee female supports it like incredibly well. I also think it is just fantastic on Tailwind teams. Yeah, I think this mon, like, it's pretty niche what it does. Not niche, sorry. It's pretty like one-dimensional is what I meant. Basically, you're clicking Acro, you're probably like going like Crunch or like Throat Chop, and then you're just going like Dragon Dance plus Protect, right? That's basically how you're gonna run this one, right? But what I think makes this mon so damn good is, like, obviously, you know, you can go booster attack, right? Like, say you pair this up with like a Torn, right? You go something like this, you go Adamant, just like, look at that fucking absurd attack stat, dude. That's actually insane, that attack stat. We'll just like dump the rest in HP just for like GP. You probably want to like drop a bit of that and put it in def. But like we're not here to talk about EV spreads. We're here to talk about what the mon does, right? So this mon absolutely pumps out damage, right? Like, if like Terra Flying Acrobatics from this thing it's fucking wild. Like, let's be honest, boys. This mon just shits damage. Like, it wakes up and it just shits damage, right? It's insane, dude. Like, oh man, it's crazy. And like, if you look at the meta too, nothing really resists flying in the meta. Now, like, flying as a defensive typing isn't fantastic, but like Roaring Moon's job is to come in, outspeed whatever's in front of it and KO it, right? And I do think like a lot of these Dragapult teams that have been running around, I personally feel like you could just slap a Roaring Moon in that like same slot and like it's just still like really damn good. It's a bit of a better defensive typing. Its biggest issue though really is so it's not a better defensive typing. Sorry, Dark isn't better than Ghost as a defensive typing, but like as like an offensive typing as well, like the ability to be really good into like Psy Spam, you know, is like obviously really good. And like this mon's biggest issue obviously is its physical, you know, defense. which like isn't the greatest, but like this mon just puts on so much pressure, man. Like if you can get these acrobatics off, like this mon's insane. I think if you pair this up with either redirection plus DD, or you could even like drop this and go something like, I don't know, like Iron Head. You could also go like Breaking Swipes. Breaking Swipes is another move I think right now that is like kind of slept on as well. Like the ability to hit both mons, especially too when there are a lot of mons running around right now that are obviously physical. I think a lot of the meta is physical right now, so Breaking Swipes can be incredibly good. And yeah, I just think Rory Moon, man, it's a mon that puts out so much damage. Like I'm so sad it's like not seeing more play, but I would definitely, you know, expect to see this make at least one top 16 team, like maybe two. And I think that'd be really cool. It's my favorite Pokemon, so I'd love to see it. All right, next one here is Basculegion. Now, look, I'll try and make this one short and sweet. Basculegion is the best Swift Swimmer we have in the game by far. Like this mon's absolutely insane. I think it benefits a lot from Life Orb. Another really cool set though, obviously, is Mystic Water. They're both pretty good. It just depends how you want to do it. Terra Water is fantastic. Terra Grass is also pretty good. Again, it just depends on your matchup, but I think Terra Water is like almost always the best. And why? It's because in rain, Wave Crash is fucking broken. Let's be honest, boys. Wave Crash, it does so much work, man. Like Wave Crash is, it's insane. It's insane. Like this move, like 120 base power in the rain from a mon, like, yeah, like sure, its attack stat's nothing crazy. Like, let's be honest. Like that attack stat, like it's decent. 180 is decent. It's nothing crazy. But when you have a 120 base power move, boosted by Sun, boosted by Terra, boosted by like Mystic Water, this mod starts like doing insane damage. You start like one-shotting a lot of things that you shouldn't. Like, I'm pretty sure the common Iron Hands gets one-shot by this. Like, I'm talking like, you know, a bit of physical defense and a bit of HP gets like one tap by this in rain, which is kind of nutty. It also has Aqua Jet too, which is like really, really cool. Obviously priority is fantastic, right? But the thing that does make this mon really, really good, and probably like why it is like, you know, the best rain mon, or at least the best Swift Swimmer, I should say, is Last Respects. Now, for those who don't know, Last Respects, basically, whenever an ally dies, its power goes up by 50. If 3 allies die, all of a sudden you have a 200 base power stab move coming off a really, really good attack stat. Like, basically, this mon's, like, attack stat isn't, like... I said it before. Its attack stat's not amazing, but when you have 2 insane moves, man, it just pumps out damage. Even if, like, 2 allies go down, right? Even one. If you have 1 ally go down, this thing's base 100. Like, base 100 stab ghost move is still insane. Like, it's the best physical ghost move there is. Let's be real. And, like, Wave Crash, you know, Aqua Jet, man, this mon in rain, absolutely insane. Enough said. Alright, boys, so look, I said this one before Regulation C started. I'm saying it again. I think Lamora is another mon that is, like, dude, it's so slept on right now. It's like, it actually pains me how little play this one gets. Because, like, basically, Lamora is this, like, really cool mon where, with the Poison Rock typing, it walls Flutterfish, right? So, if they are running something like Fluttermane plus Fish, which, as I said, I think is going to see a lot more play. This mon walls it, you know, resists both their stab moves. With Assault Vest, like, you're incredibly defensive on the special side. You pair this thing with something, you know, like an Intimidate user, whether that be Lander, Arcanine, whatever, Gyarados. This mod just becomes incredibly bulky with, like, max attack. But then, like, the insane thing is, like, with 86 speed, you're still pretty good. Like, this mon is, like, a really good Tailwind mon. You can run something like this, and all of a sudden you're outspeeding everything that isn't under Tailwind. And then you have this absurd attacks, like special attack stat, which is like, again, fucking crazy. Like this mon should not have this much special attack, I don't think. And then you pair it with things like Power Gem. Like Power Gem is great. Sludge Bomb, it's like, yeah, there isn't really any good poison types in the meta that like actually use their stabs. Like that's, you know, pretty good. Earth Power is like fantastic on this mon. Like again, really, really good. Mortal Spin is like, especially if you're playing like a slower team, right? Like if you've got a more stall-based team, Mortal Spin's insane. Especially if you pair that with something like Corrosion. You know, poison things like a Mungus, which is like really, really good. And then this mon is also just like one of the best Grass Terra mons in the game. And Grass Terra is like one of the best Terras in the game. Like right now, I think like if you look at the meta, like Ghost and Water are probably like the 2 premier ones, right? Ghost is really good for fake out, for fighting moves. Obviously the normal moves from things like Ursaluna, the E-speeds from D-Knight and whatnot. And the Water is just like fantastic into the Urshis and whatnot. The Grass is probably like the 3rd best Terra in the meta right now. And with things like Terra Blast, off this, again, like absurd special attack stat, dude, this mon like puts out so much damage. I think it's really good on hyper offense. I think it's also really good on stall. And yeah, it's just a great defensive mon that can put out a lot of damage, and I think is incredibly underrated. All right, boys. So this next mon here, now this is the secret sauce, and like, you know, you love it. I get to just click it. You don't have to type the name in. That's Annihilate. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. About 2 to 3 weeks ago, I genuinely thought Annihilate was the call for Worlds. I have since kind of dropped my opinion on it being like the call, because I don't think that Screens is as good as I thought it was. But I do think this mon is absolutely insane. Now, in terms of items, there's a few items you can go for. Safety Goggles is good, Citrus is good, Lefties is good. They're all freaking good, man. In terms of ability, I think you go to Defiant. Intimidate's picking up a lot. Defiant's really good. If you want to, Vital Spirit's nice for Munguses, but again, I think Goggles plus this is just fantastic. In terms of Terra, we'll go over this one quickly. I think Terra Water is the best. Terrify is still pretty decent though, especially, you know, into things like Flutterfish, but that is kind of not as popular right now, so we're gonna leave it at Terra Water. In terms of moves, obviously Drain Punch and Rage Fist are insane. Bulk Up and then Protect. I think, look, you're probably like almost always running this unless you're running some of like the cheese with like Primeape where you just like double beating up and whatnot. But basically, why is this mon so damn good? Well, obviously, Rage Fist, for those who don't know, is an insane move. Every time you get hit, you know, you just get more power. And also, I just realized, I said, you know, Last Respects was the best ghost move. I think that's actually wrong. I do think Rage Fist is a bit better than Last Respects because it's a bit easier to use. Obviously, this mon pairs up incredibly well with things like Beat Up Mouse. We have seen the Beat Up Primeape as well a bit recently. I think there was like a Japanese player who used that, and then it's kind of been popping around. I think James Beck made a video about it and whatnot. So yeah, that's kind of coming around. But this mon, incredibly freaking good. Why? Fighting type resists rocks, and I think that, as I said earlier, I think the rock types right now, they're kind of coming around a bit. You know, obviously you got things like Lando's been spamming Rock Slide. Hisuian Arcanine is really good. Also Hisuian Arcanine with this mon, I've said it before, it's actually really good because you can go the Loaded Dice Rock Blast. Really cool for getting your getting your Rage Fists up. But yeah, so, you know, I think the fighting type is fantastic. And then on top of that, the ghost is unreal. Basically, Qianpao can't touch you. Obviously, fighting type resists dark, which is fantastic for the sucker punches. And yeah, you don't really care. Obviously, you don't care about the Sacred Swords, and you don't really care about the Ice Spinner's Arc Crashes. Also, it prevents the E-Speeds coming out of the D-Knights. And, you know, this mon, it's bulky enough to a point where you can eat hits from like a Fluttermane and Revenge Kill it. And its attack stats also so nice where you don't actually need that much investment. A lot of people run something like this, and then you just like start maxing out on the bulk on this thing, and it's kind of nutty like how strong this actually gets. I think it's like something like that. I think the kids are playing. I don't know. I feel like it's something in this area. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't played around with Ape, like, you know, for the last like 2 weeks, but I do think something like this is really good. As I said, I was playing it on screens. I do think obviously it's fantastic with Intimidate support. I think it's fantastic with, you know, Redirection plus like Friend Guard. And yeah, I do think Ape's ability to match up into a lot of the meta mons and then just like kill them is like really good. Yeah, it's just really bulky, hits really hard. It's got a really nice speed tier. And yeah, I do think Annihilape is definitely a mon that I think will get a really good placement. And I would love to see his screen teams do good because, as I said, look, I think Screen's Ape is like one of the best like teams in the format. I do just worry that in a long drawn out format like Worlds that you're going to get crit, you know, probably too many times, especially with things like Urshi running around, right? All it takes is like one bad play or, you know, something like that. And all of a sudden you're just getting crit down by Urshis. But yeah, I do think Annihilape is super slept on. Now, boys, finally, to round out the video, everyone's favorite little guy, Bramble Gas. Now, look, I'm sure most of you already know, Wolf made a video on this one recently. Bramble Gas is the anti-meta Pokemon. Why? Because Wind Rider makes it immune to wind moves. What are wind moves? That's like Icy Wind, it's Heat Wave, it's all the moves from the Genies. Obviously, you're a Ghost type and a Grass type, which means you basically hardball Ursaluna if it doesn't have Crunch. You can eat the E-Speeds. You don't like Sucker Punches from Qianpao Dark Urshi, but that's okay. You've got Terra for that. This mon loves rocking something like Rocky Helmet. Why? Because Water Urshi can't touch you. It can't CC you, and you're just gonna eat the Surging Strike shot. This mod I think is, yeah, look, it's a little slept on. It's nothing crazy. Its attack stat's decent. You know, you can run to like this bump if you want to go crazy. Its speed stat is like in a position where obviously you're quick enough to like not have to invest that much speed, but you probably still want to run at least like 118 to 120. If not, honestly, just max. Honestly, if I'm being serious, you probably just want to run like max, right? It really depends, yeah. Like to me, it kind of comes down to like, are you rocking Helmet or not? If you're rocking Helmet, you probably don't want max speed. You probably want to be quite a bit, you know, bulkier. Like, you know, maybe run something like the Adamant set I was just like looking at, right? So you're like, yeah. Sorry, let me fix that. Oh God, Scott, what are you doing? Run that down to there. You run like Adamant. You run this down to like 120, 118. Maybe just got like max HP. Yeah, to me that looks fine, right? This basically allows you to kind of like use your Rocky Helmet. I do think though that like the Jolly Max spread is still like really solid. Because what you can do with like Jolly Max is you can run things like Loaded Dice, which I think is like kind of like really good on this mon. Because like with Wind Rider plus Bullet Seed, you can pump out damage. You can pick up things like Qianpao. Also, this mon does pair pretty nicely with Qianpao as well, which I do think is kind of cool. But yeah, you got things like Bullet Seed. I think it gets Power Whip as well. Yeah, Power Whip's there. Seed Bomb's a bit more consistent. But again, if you're running a set like this, you're probably just going with the Bullet Seed anyway. I do think it gets Shadow Sneak, which is kind of cool. It gets Phantom Force as well, I think, right? Which is its like best move. Sorry, best Ghost move. It has Protect. What other physical moves do this mon actually have, actually? I personally haven't really tested this out. Trailblazer is actually cool too. I haven't tested this mon out that much myself, but I do definitely think there's a lot of potential there. And I'm not gonna lie, I would not be surprised if Wolf brings this to Worlds, and if Wolf brings this to Worlds, it's gonna get like top 16. Like if someone like Wolf Glick genuinely thinks this mon's good, he's gonna bring it to Worlds, he's gonna get great results, it's gonna be fantastic. But look, I'm all about it. I love Bramble, guys. I think this mon has a really, really cool idea. I wish its stats were better. Like again, Game Freak kind of like, you know, like 55 HP and 70 defenses is awful, and 80 special attack stat when you don't use it again is like awful. Like come on, Game Freak, help a guy out, help Bramble guys out, man. Give him a little more HP, a little more defense, all that. Just give him something, man. Give him something. But yeah, look, as I said before though, this one does hit really hard. If you pair this with Tailwind as well, like with the Wind Rider, obviously you get the +1 attack. And then your Shadows needs to really just start picking up Fluttermanes as well, which is really, really cool. But yeah, I do think Bramble Gas is a bit slept on right now, and I definitely am excited to see what this mon does at Worlds. But yeah, guys, that's it for my list. Honestly, tell me what you guys think. Obviously, Worlds is like a week away. I plan on doing a lot more content, especially next week, in the lead up to Worlds. You know, I want to kind of get some predictions out there for who I think is going to do good, what mons, you know, blah, 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 all that good stuff. But yeah, this has been 10 mons I think that are a little slept on, but will have very, very good results at Worlds. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.